Hey guys, for today's project we're going to be making this 3-tiered display, and this can be stored on top of your vanity or a shelf, and you can store whatever you want on it, but I'm making this one for my nail polish collection and I'm going to store it on this little corner shelf. So I'm starting with a piece of foam board and I trace out the size that I need and I cut that out with my utility knife. I'm going to cut 2 pieces of foam board per tier, and you can make however many tiers that you want, and each tier is going to be a smaller size. And you want to maintain the same radius. So my trick for doing that on the style that I'm doing or the shape that I'm making here, I take my larger pieces because I started by making my largest piece first, and each size or each tier smaller, I just hold that larger piece back a couple of inches and then trace and cut out my next smaller tier. And this is going to vary the method that you use depending on the shape that you're actually making. To create the actual riser part of each tier, I'm going to be using these foam seat cushions. This is just 1-inch thick foam. I got it at Walmart a long time ago for about $6 or $7, and it comes in handy for a lot of projects. So what I'm going to do is cut out 1 piece of foam to be sandwiched in between each set of our foam boards that we cut out. So here's the largest piece, I'm cutting this out, and then I'm going to cut a piece for the next size down and then the next size down. So I'm going to have 3 pieces of foam and we're going to make foam sandwiches. Now you should have 1 piece of foam per size and 2 pieces of foam board per size. And now we're going to go outside and use some spray adhesive. I'm using 3M Super 77 and I'm going to spray this on my foam. So I'm just spraying one side at a time, and I'm going to place 1 piece of foam board. Make sure it's centered and just press that down so it sticks really well. And then flip it over and spray the other side and press that second piece of foam board down. And then repeat this with all 3 tiers that you're making. Now I'm going to be wrapping each of the risers in fabric. I'm using this white faux leather. I like this because it gives it kind of a plush, sort of luxurious look, and also it doesn't get stringy on the edges, so it's really easy to work with. So right now I just have positioned my tier kind of where there's a couple inches to work with of fabric across the back, and then just about 1 inch across the front or so. And now I'm using this book to trace a couple of lines because I'm going to be cutting out this very back corner. And so when I flip it around here, you'll see how I lined up everything. So I'm just cutting on one side right up to the very back corner of the tier or the riser, and then on the other side I'm going to cut out that square, but I'm not actually all the way up. See how there's a little extra fabric right there? So on one side there's a little more fabric because that's going to be a flap that we use to cover up that corner. And then the other side is going to fit flush against the back of the display. So we're going to work on this piece first, the piece with the flap, and you just want to trim that little top piece there up to the corner. And then we're just going to cut that off because we don't need that. It's just going to be more trouble than it's worth, so we want to get rid of that now. So that's how it should look. So now we're outside and I'm using my spray adhesive to spray the back of the fabric, and because we already traced out exactly where the tier or the riser needs to sit, we already know where it needs to be placed on the fabric, so I'm just pressing that down. And then I'm pulling tight on the side of fabric that has our flap that we created. Just smooth that down. And then you want to smooth it down that little flap around the corner. And then the other piece that fits flush over it is going to cover that up and make a nice clean finished corner across the back there. And now I'm I'm trimming off some of that extra fabric on the sides and the front, so I just make a couple of snips down the sides of the display, right in line with the sides. And then on the bottom, I snip that off because we don't need to keep any of that fabric around. And on the sides, I leave a little bit, maybe like a couple millimeters or so of fabric just to kind of create some little flaps. And then on the very top there, which is actually, it looks like the bottom, but that's the top I'm trimming right now, that I'm gonna leave a couple millimeters extra too of fabric that just kind of happens to cover slightly over the display. Just because we want to tuck that kind of edge down. We don't want a raw edge when we're done. So I'm going to be taking a bit of fabric here to cover the front after I measure out how much I'm going to need. So I know the length that I need. Now to measure out the width I need, I just place my display on edge and trace that out. And that tells me how thick I need to trim my strip of fabric to cover the front. And I like to cut the strip of fabric a little bit longer than what I actually need, just to make sure I have enough to cover completely, and I can always trim off the excess later on. So now I'm outside with my spray adhesive, just spraying the back of those strips of fabric and placing them down over the fronts of each tier and just kind of smoothing that out. And then I just trim off any extra fabric, and I leave a few extra millimeters just to kind of close off that edge, make sure it's completely covered, and kind of wrap around the corner. Now it's time for my favorite part, which is using these decorative nails. I got these at the fabric store. They are awesome. They're so much fun to use. I like to use these in all different kinds of projects, and they're very easy too. So they can press into the foam board across the top or on the side. So it's totally up to you where you want to place them, how far you want to place them apart. I usually place these about an inch apart. Okay, cannot talk because I'm clearly overly excited about my decorative nail trim. Okay, so I'm just gonna finish off all of the pieces, and it's totally up to you if you want to hot glue these together and make them like permanently stuck together, or you can leave them individual and stackable, so you can kind of change it up as you please. So I'm just gonna leave mine stackable like this and loose from each other instead of glued together. And now it's time to place my nail polish on here and see how it all fits. So I hope you guys enjoyed this project. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.